Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for coming to our literacy stations in middle school and how using stations for differentiation and small group instruction benefits all students. So, differentiation meets students' needs where they're at. Differentiation uses data to determine where students are academically and meeting them where they are in order to help them feel successful in school and close any gaps that may exist or challenge them in any areas that they excel. Small groups, while in our district is a non-negotiable for the elementary school levels, it is not a non-negotiable from sixth grade on. However, small groups encourage more active and deliberate participation from both the facilitator and the students in order to enhance that student learning. As our class sizes begin to grow, we're able to narrow it down and teach kids at a smaller level, which we all know is best practice. A couple strategies that you can use to access that differentiation in small group are using non-controlled texts where students can read with 95% accuracy. So when you have those teacher-led stations, using texts that kids can actually read on their own in order to kind of dive into those more difficult topics. Using reader's theater is always a great way to practice those fluency skills at a higher grade. We already use Greek and Latin roots. Why not make that into a station? That's a non-negotiable for us, so we can use that word work as one of those stations. Modeling, using audiobooks or using with read alouds. Even though our kids are 6th through 8th grade, they are not too old to be read to and to have that model of exactly what it is they're supposed to be sounding like when they read out loud. Tracking. We already know that we're drowning in data, but using this data really helps us see if what we're working with is actually closing those gaps and moving kids accordingly depending on the topic. Maybe they don't understand theme, but they're really good with main idea. So they would be in different groups requiring that. And having those small groups with only 5 or 6 students at a time gets you less distractions in the classroom, as well as more one-on-one time to build those relationships that we all know are incredibly important. So here's a sample lesson plan. This one was specific to theme and poetry at the 8th grade level. The purpose of this lesson is to provide students with small group instruction based on their needs when working with poetry and theme. When I put through this lesson plan, it actually covered 4 standards in a 3 or 4 day span here. So students will use their knowledge of Greek and Latin roots to complete the activities provided. And then students will go through a variety of stations that focus on theme, figurative language, and poetry in order to better understand the poem that we're working in as a whole class, which is There Will Come Soft Rains. So at the start of class as a bell ringer, students are working on quill or admentum, which was something that we use in our district here that already differentiates automatically. Having that technology available to them, they've already taken pre-tests for both of those that have already adapted to try and close those gaps. This is usually about a 10-minute assignment plus passing period for my students. So it gives them plenty of time to work where they need help. It also gives me a chance to check in with students first thing in the morning. Students are then asked to go get their vocabulary books, and they are working with that Greek and Latin roots in a whole group setting. So this is still whole group here. So then the Google Slides come up and they are given both visually and auditorily. So both you're kind of attacking both of those students who need to see it as well as hear it. Stations are going to be about 20 minutes, and I split groups up for this particular lesson based on NWEA scores and their classwork and ability in the class. Also looking at behaviors as well. Groups are split into high average, low average, and low. This was a lesson plan specific for my my class that did not have LRE students or honor students. So it's kind of my middle group, but we still know that in those middle groups, we have that range of students. So the 5 stations that I split up, I had theme with a teacher, and we were working on theme specifically to the poem that we've been working on. Another station was a game. It was like a matching game with figurative language, where they had to match the figurative language to an example. Then students had to read a poem on their own and answer some questions, as well as do some notice and note annotations, which again is a non-negotiable for us. Quizlet was what students were working on to help cement those Greek and Latin roots. And then another station was their exact path, which is already differentiated for them. At the end of the second day of rotation, students will complete exit tickets on Schoology, so it'll go directly in for us, and covering poetry, figurative language, Greek and Latin roots, and theme. So, culturally responsive teaching is one in which we honor the range of students' interests, identities, promote the value of cultural and linguistic pluralism, proactively facilitate a sense of connection, challenge their thinking, and cultivate their sense of autonomy and agency. So, basically, understanding that our students are completely different people and come from completely different backgrounds, and making sure that we acknowledge that in the classroom. So, how do we do that in the classroom within our stations? So, we need to reframe instruction to make sure that the strengths and diversity is being brought into the classroom by our students. We want to know our students, we want to know what their lives are like outside of the classroom, so we know how to bring that in. Developing cultural knowledge about your students' families and communities and how those impact students' perceptions, self esteem, values, classroom behavior, and learning allows us to provide and improve the learning process for them. So making sure that they are seen outside of our classroom is incredibly important. So what I would like you to do right now is I asked you to bring a lesson plan with you, and I want you to kind of brainstorm how you can take that lesson plan and turn it into a 2 to 3 day station lesson plan that includes culturally responsive teaching, as well as just making sure that you're grouping your students accordingly. When you're finished, if you could please scan this QR code and take a brief survey it takes you to, that would help me a lot, and then we can continue to grow as a school. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, call my extension, or follow me on Twitter at Miss Mooney is Lit.